Hi, this is Pierre Sabak, and we're talking to Phil Langdon about gods of divine union and illumination. This is the third part to the interview. Basically, in the first part of the interview, we dealt with the biographical details of Phil. He talked about an angelic being. This angelic being made him question his sense of reality. And then we took that further in the second interview when we talked about mystical states and a mystical or spiritual experience that Phil had, which culminated in this book, Gods of Divine Union. Now, in the third section of the interview, I want to we talked about the light, and I want to go into the light, and then I want to try and link that back in, because off the camera we were talking about angelic beings, and it was very interesting in terms of how you were saying that this all interlinks in the greater scheme of things.
Yeah.
So I want to look at the question of the light now, because we really finished with the light, and to me it seemed that the light was an essential part of this experience.
It is. It's the key to the transformation of an individual from a human to an angel. This is what turns you into an angel.
Is this the baptism of fire?
Yeah. This is being born in spirit.
Being born in spirit, to be born again.
Yeah. Out of your body. Yeah. Away from everything physical. So I was saying that I felt like I shot up into outer space.
And there was this scroll as well, wasn't
Yeah, you see the scroll? Yeah, everything spins out. You see a scroll. After I had a look at it and realised it was going to infinity, my eyesight shut off suddenly and everything went black. Yeah. And I felt like I shot up into outer space, and my body was now an expanding bubble that went to infinite proportions by all intents and purposes. I mean, I couldn't even, you can't comprehend that anyway. You can't...
Complete expansion.
A complete expansion into, nothingness. Infinite expansion into nothingness, and it was instantaneous, the whole thing. And now I feel as though I have no body, there's nothing around me whatsoever, it's just pitch black, empty void. You can tell that it's a void and it has space, and that's all there is. So I had to work out how to turn around, because there's no reference in that state. So as soon as I realised I had to turn around and I had no reference, I thought I could use myself as a reference, and yet that made me think of, my God, where is my body gone? I'd lost my body. I don't know where it was.
Was there a feeling of panic or...?
Not at all. Yeah. It's the most comfortable, the most non-freaky, even though it sounds bizarre and freaky, it's the most non-freaky thing I can possibly... It felt absolutely natural and normal and okay, and that I just had to sort of use a bit of logic to work my way around to how to turn around.
So this is a natural state of the human mind.
Yeah, right. Yeah, kind of like that. So I thought, how am I going to know that I'm turning around? Because I naturally started looking around like that, first of all. And as I did that, it's as if my view, my peripheral vision simply followed me. And I thought, oh God, I don't know if I can turn around. There's no reference. So I'm a reference. I thought, where's my body? I was in my living room a moment ago. What happened to it all? And as I'm thinking that, a membrane appears around me. It's about 100 foot high and 100 foot wide. And it is a membrane of the outer surface of my upper body. And I can see that my head is there and my shoulders there. And it's just the ultra-thin membrane. It looked like oil on the surface of water. As I'm looking at it and looking up into it, I noticed the head is turned to the left relative to the shoulders. And I thought, right, I think if I turn my head and line it up with the shoulders, I'm the equivalent of here. I'm a point source of awareness inside my own body. It's empty and I've only got the outside of it, I can see. So I thought, right, if that's my body, I can turn the head. And it did start turning. So it starts to turn like this really slowly. And I think, right, maybe I can use that to sweep round and and actually be able to turn my gaze, because I think there's something behind me to see for some reason. I thought there was. As I did that, the head's turning. I see beams of light, thin, very, very straight beams of light coming into my peripheral vision from the right-hand side. As soon as I clock them, the membrane disappears instantly, and now I can see these beams and that there are different distances to me. I've got a sense of depth. One, they're like that. One's there, one's there. They have different depths, and I just followed them along. And they're really, really long. And as I turned round, I realised they're actually coming and projecting from what looks like a massive cloud. And it looks like this, exactly like this. So my view has swept in from this side, and I'm only seeing these beams at the moment. And then as I sweep along, there's the cloud, and it's right there in front of me. So I saw that. The cloud itself took up about a third to a half. That's precisely what it looks like when you turn around to see it. If you notice, there are two beams here that get fatter, and these are the two that project out towards you from the front of this cloud. Okay.
Where is this cloud?
This
is it
place.
perception? Is it God? Is it infinite? Is it...
Right. So I had no idea while I was looking at it, but I may as well tell you now because I know in hindsight. That cloud is the light shining from your own pineal gland in your head. That is what I call the pineal light. It is the light effulging from within the gland. So nothing about this really is that physical. It's not biological. Yeah. What's happened is God has entered your body. He's done something with your nervous system. Your nervous system has been affected, and when He expanded out from your psyche, when you understood the nature of one thing only, that light is what is produced in that expansion.
Can I just mention that, Michael Percy, the American-Canadian neurologist and neurotheologist as well, they claim to have measured biophotons coming out of the human brain. And one of the, I've talked a while ago actually where I can correlate that to what the shamans describe, Eskimo shamans describe as Quamanek, the idea of manifesting light from within. And I'm just obviously seeing that for the first time, and I'm seeing that kind of correlates with things I've seen, but I've kind of read it, because it's like, Michael Percy was like a mainstream scientist discovering these things, so it's kind of really interesting to see that you're talking about light coming out from your gland of the brain.
So your expansion that basically generates this infinite void that you end up in this situation has come from the center of that, from the center of your head. Therefore, this light is the center of that infinite expanse, effectively. It defines a center. We define the center in the infinite by doing this.
So you're talking about through the perception of observation, that is defining the infinite.
You are defining the poignant nature of truth, which is ineffable. So truth is everything from ineffable to poignancy.
With the switching on with this light, and it may not be a correct metaphor, but do you think it's somehow changed your brain structurally?
Absolutely. When I came back from this experience, after 10 minutes, I flew around this cloud at will. If I wanted to see something close up, I would instantly find myself in that position. So I examined one of these beams very close up, and there is no distinction in it. It's just crystal white. I couldn't tell, and I examined the cloud close up as well.
Yeah. It's like real time, so like this isn't slid, but it's real time.
It's real time. It seems like real time. It seems like a cloud that you'd see in the summer sky. Yeah.
See, I've got another question as well. And these individual streams, are these different streams of consciousness in terms of either aspects of yourself, or are these other souls, or does this just pertain to you, or is there no distinction?
How interesting, because that's what I was asking myself while I was looking at it. I actually got the impression, or just a thought I had, that each of these beams connected to the center of a galaxy, a different galaxy. But that's just a thought, and that turned out not to be the case. Okay, it's just the way this thing is made. From the explosion that you have, that expansion, it produces this, and I can't explain the exact nature of why it produces that, or why, but it's squared off, because there are 4 distinct faces. This is a pillar of cloud, so I'm going to show you the second view very quickly so you can get a much better impression of what it looks like overall.
So do you think that this relates to the cube within symbolism, in terms of the mathematics of the cube?
In terms of the intellectual nature of the cube and what it contains, yeah, that kind of mentality and cleverness and thinking is the kind of thinking you would have after you experience this. So that's seeing it from an angle from the side, and you can see the length of the cloud. It's a pillar of cloud.
Now you see, having read your book, I think what I found interesting was in terms of how you then linked the cloud in terms of Kabbalistic and in Christian symbolism.
Yes.
So you have the relationship between the wool of the cloud, which is wool-like, and so therefore can be represented as a lamb.
Yeah.
The lamb has obviously astrological connotations.
Yep.
And you talked about that the light is the lamb being slain.
Yes.
So was this an intuitive understanding of what you were looking at, in terms of just so almost saying, wow, bingo, that's it, I understand these symbols now because I've seen it and I can recognize the truth?
Kind of. What happened very briefly is after a while I went to the Bible and I pulled out Revelations. I thought, I wonder if Revelation is going to help me understand what that cloud was.
The name of God is a cube, isn't it? In Revelations.
I see what you're saying.
Okay. Well, it gives the measurements, and the kingdom of the God is actually a cube.
Right.
So
So in Revelations, it's the first time I encountered the concept of a lamb of God, and I thought, hang on a minute, it says its hair is white as snow. When I was able to zoom in on the surface, and it turned out that it's covered in curly cylindrical bundles of made up of individual fibres. And there'd be one there and one there, like a basket weave, and they all crisscross over each other, just like a basket weave. So I think of it as a basket and a Gordian knot as well as a lamb whose hair is white as snow, because its hair is white as snow. When I saw those fibres, I instantly associated it with human hair. Instantly. And I laughed because of it, because the whole cloud now can come across as God's beard. It's the big white beard.
The big white beard of God.
Is the cloud. So it's another metaphor. So it's a beard, it's a lamb, it's a basket, it's a knot. It's also a boat, because a boat is a main body with oars that stick out of its body.
You see, this is kind of interesting in terms of my own work, because in my new book I talk about a woven or a stitched bloodline, and I obviously make reference to angelic sailors and boats, and this was one of the reasons why you contacted me initially and we began to correspond.
That's right.
Was because of the correlations, and I think people with a rational mind will tend to look at things either and or, but I can see here where the Gnostic tradition and the angelic tradition, they are very much complementary. And the way that I think that they are complementary is because these beings, whatever you want to call them, have deconstructed the nature of consciousness.
Yes.
And once you deconstruct the nature of consciousness, you're saying is that it can be represented in this way and appear in these symbols.
Well, because this light is the result of that spiritual union. That light is therefore the child of spiritual union,
which is born from a virgin.
Which is born from a virgin. You are the virgin.
In the Latin traditions, they would be the nubigine of those who are born of a cloud.
Aye.
And of course, we can look at this in a literal sense, and that's true. And we can also look at it in a metaphysical sense, which would also be true.
Yes, that's right.
And
there's many layers at the same time.
There are many layers.
That's right.
So in terms of, I'll let you continue. I don't want to.
That's fine. You're absolutely right. The human being is then the feminine cosmos, the microcosm of the entire cosmos is an individual human being. Therefore, we are basically feminine or female ourselves, and we are the bride in the marriage, the spiritual union marriage.
The bride of Christ.
Yeah, the bride of God. God's bride. God is the bridegroom. The true self is the bridegroom. When you become one, you make a divine child, and the light is the divine child.
The light.
Therefore, it is the Son of God.
To be born of the light.
Yeah.
Which is Gnosis.
Yes. And as the Son of God, it's the entire subject of the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John is about this light.
Yeah. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was...
The Word is the light.
The Word is the light.
It's the formation that God has made. It's the only eternal thing that really exists, that has a physical quality. All the other eternal issues are infinities, of which there are three. There are three types of infinity. This is involved with those three types, but it's a physical creation. It's a limited thing. It's not transient, because it is eternal, because it's in a singular state that is eternal. Therefore, its creation is forever. Even though it's born in your head, it always exists anyway. And this distinction between it existing and being born is the same distinction between the Creator and the divine child. Right. They are one and the same thing.
The observer.
Yes. It's the loop. It's the point of looping of creation.
I was going to say, where is the difference between the observer and the observed? But that's found in the loop, isn't it? Which you talk of, or the guardian knot.
Right. We should go into the angelic host, because basically that light is the signifier that you are now an angel. You have just become an angel because you gained what we call gained your wings. By flying into that underworld, that is you gaining your wings, and you are now an angel, separated from the physical world, because it doesn't really matter to you anymore. That's it.
So, as an angel, would you say that there's then a responsibility to communicate the information responsibly?
Yes.
Can you teach this, or can it only be alluded to?
You can teach it, but you can't teach the insight. The fundamental insight you get, you cannot teach, you cannot convey. You can only lead somebody to the door, as you mentioned earlier. They have to walk through it themselves.
So this is why this is often taught in parables, or in allegories.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
We talked about the angelic host, and I mean, I look at the angelic host in a very practical, physical, nuts and bolts sense, in terms of extraterrestrials, but the extraterrestrials in itself is a limited concept.
Yes.
Really, we're dealing with the masters of waveform who've deconstructed reality.
Variations of, there's different kinds of beings.
There are different types of beings, both spiritual and physical.
Yes.
And again, many of these beings recognize the difference between the physical and the spiritual and can deconstruct those different states. As they can deconstruct this state which you're talking about at an intellectual level. So you off camera you were talking about how you saw the angelic host. Can you describe that in detail and what that really means?
3 months after the event with this cloud, exactly 3 months later, I'd been going to work up until this point, and I came home from work, normal day. I thought, I've seen that light, that cloud, that's the last amazing experience I've had, wonderful. I have to get on with my life now, kind of, and assimilate it, and obviously I'm going to assimilate it slowly, and my brain feels different. It feels like a stone. My brain actually feels like a stone in the head. Anyway, and the top of the head feels like it's up here, because you can feel like a strong magnetic field up here. So it gives you a sensation that the top of your head is here.
That you're being pulled.
Yeah, that my head is extended up constantly. You get used to it, so it sort of, you don't think about it anymore. So 3 months later, I come home, I open the door, put my keys down, and something exploded out of my solar plexus and surrounded my head. And when I saw it, to me it looked like an outside projection. I could actually see it. But if you were standing there looking at me, you wouldn't have seen it. So I'm seeing an inner issue that is projected outside of myself. It was a crowd of people, nothing more, and they went off into the distance in all directions surrounding my head. I could see the person in front of me was a woman, for instance, very clear. And with this visualization came all the information that was involved with it at the same time. Instantly. It was such a shock that I physically fell forward onto my hands and knees, and I burst out crying. I've never cried that intensely in my whole life, ever. It was 10 to 15 minutes of the most intense crying because of what I've just found out.
This again is a mystical or ecstatic state which is very well documented within literature.
Right.
And you saw this crowd of people, and why did you think that they were angelic?
I was told they are. I knew they are. I actually know them.
It's very interesting that you also describe them as a crowd, just because the Greek word for the angelic host, one of the etymological roots, means crowd.
Right.
So that itself is interesting.
And I saw them as angels and extraterrestrials at the same time. And you've used the expression Angelian. And when I heard you say that on YouTube, I thought, he knows what he's talking about.
I know what I'm talking about to a degree. There's always a degree of sound.
Sure, absolutely. But when you said that, I you recognize the similarity between those two. And that is a correct similarity. Not to the fullest extent, because it doesn't mean every other being in the universe is an angel. It simply means those who have come to Earth and incarnated in these bodies are angels, and they've been living elsewhere in different situations as extraterrestrials.
I mean, in the Apocrypha, I think it's the Apocrypha of Paul or John, I can't remember, but it talks about soul seeds being planted, and I think that in itself is an interesting concept, that the soul itself can be planted into a body. So that then begs the interesting question: is there the gardener, and who is the gardener, and who is planting the soul seed, or is it the individual who takes that upon himself to be incarnated on whatever planet, because we're dealing here with infinite universes? Are you the gardener, or is the gardener separate?
As an angel, you become a gardener of the cosmos. It's a normal aspect of being an angel. Imagine the cosmos and its galaxy as a literal rolling hill field of like a massive garden with trees. So the galaxies are now trees.
Are the seeds. If we,
you can think of them like that. You can think of them like
seeds are scattered in the earth, the underworld. Stars are the seeds. I mean,
there are several ways of seeing it that are all correct.
Yeah, of course. And
they're all correct.
We concur. And it is interesting that, and we were talking about this earlier off camera, that that the etymology for jinn relates into the word for a gardener or a garden. It's coming from the etymology of jana, which is to hide or to conceal.
Right.
So the connotation of a garden can have a connotation of that which is invisible, which links into the jinn. And again, within the Greek traditions, you've got the neophyte, the neophytos, which are the newly planted. Phuton, a plant, phot, which is light. So the newly planted is really talking about the planting of light, which is the soul seed.
Right.
So again, we're dealing here with an angelic level of awareness. which would be what we were talking about earlier as indigos, starseeds,
sure.
many different names.
All sorts, rainbows,
Crystal children.
Blu-rays.
I haven't come across a lot of these names, but...
Sure, I'm used to them now, but I see they're all correct because they're all different people from different situations. And
so the starseed, you're saying that with the angelic host and the starseed, that the starseed itself comes from different stars. It's not necessarily just located with one star system.
We can't talk about it in those simple terms. Because you're dealing with pleroma,
which is the fullness.
Which is fullness. If you just think for a moment, in the underworld, I saw a membrane of my own upper body. Where'd that come from? I made that. It came from me.
Is that because you're still clinging onto the physical form? Just because?
It was something to go on, but the point I'm making is that in that empty, vacuous space,
you can create
I instantly created anything I wanted to. The second thing I created in the underworld was a zooming lens that allowed me to zoom the surface of the cloud so I could see its fibrous nature. I made that zoom, that lens. It just appeared in front of me because I wanted it.
So we're dealing here with potentiality in terms of creation.
The concept of manifesting things instantly, but those things are not real in the underworld. So you want the real experience of the physical world that does not change just by thinking about it. That chair is not going to turn into a rabbit in the next 5 minutes.
No, it's not.
I can't make it do that.
But it's going to disappear in 5,000 years.
Bingo. Yeah. So it has that quality to it.
It's a quality which is both illusory, but it also has a quality which is real. And that's the paradox or the contradiction.
It forces you to accept things are a certain way, and it forces you to find the truth behind all of it.
So what's your idea about angels? I mean, it was interesting when we were talking about this that you said that you actively then sought out the
rest of the host.
Because
I thought, well, where are they then? Who are they? What countries are they in?
So aspects of the host are presumably people like yourself who've had this experience. But are we also...
They haven't experienced it yet.
Okay.
I'm looking for them, and I'm trying to help them.
Are we also dealing with aspects of the host which have had this experience but are non-human? How do you look at this?
You have got all sorts. In our
because the crowd would express diversity, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. As I said, I mentioned a moment ago, the crowd is a microcosm of this galaxy. In particular, some of them might come from other galaxies in our local cluster, but the majority of them I would associate with this galaxy.
Yes, because I know certainly within the Gnostic traditions with the anthropos, that the angels are often... they're described as human-like. The anthropos means human, but it literally means humanoid because this is a reference to the idea that they're sentient. But in the occult tradition, there is this distinction between non-human angels and human angels, which are the seraphim and the cherubim. I mean, these are the two pillars within Freemasonry, which are the two philosophical traditions between human knowledge and non-human knowledge. I mean, ultimately...
Also mercy and severity. When focused on the human and the divinity.
I'm looking at the interpretation from a literal perspective, but as I understand, there is also a very deep Gnostic interpretation, which goes into the spirit realm, which the angels are deconstructed, and they are very aware of this. And this is where we're going to go with the physicists. Physicists are going to reconcile the difference between the physical and the non-physical.
Correct.
Because, again, physics deals with the physical, but we're really, when we're getting underneath the surface of it, electromagnetic energy, that there is something which is almost non-physical, like what you were talking about, the emptiness, which is really the fullness, and these paradoxes and these contradictions, if you like, between that which is a waveform and that which is manifested, or in the Platonic ideas, the universal forms, which are particularized as particular forms. So the angels, so you started to track some of these people down?
I go online, I'm on YouTube, and I'm in the subject matter that they would be involved in, and I'm looking at them, and I'm starting to think, well, where are they, who are they? And I start to recognize, and I think this person's one of us, I'm sure they are. And I ask them a question, and the answer comes back, and I say, I know, because they speak in a certain way. Not that they know they're an angel yet, you see. So when you come into a physical body, the psyche is a blank slate. Therefore, you forget everything because you engage with the psyche, which is nothing. It has nothing. So you start learning again from scratch.
So you're talking about people who've had this, let's say, awakening or enlightened experience, but possibly either in a past or a future life?
All of them have seen this cloud in their personal past. Everybody sees that. That is the event for the entire cosmos. Yeah, because it's the opposite of the cosmos. The cosmos being uncertain, that light in its infinite state is absolute certainty.
Right.
And if a physicist is watching this, hearing me say that, this will tweak something in them, because they think there is no such thing as absolute certainty in a relative cosmos. The underworld is
that's
certainty.
where we are at the moment within mathematics, isn't it? But
they haven't identified what the certainty is, you see.
Again, we have such a basic understanding of it anyway, and I think, again, philosophically, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're talking about the cognizance of these beings. Are all of them at different levels of awareness in terms of that they've decided to incarnate?
Yeah, they would be. Because if they're too young, if they're a toddler, they're not going to know anything about it.
Then if they're a 10-year-old, he's not going to be thinking about this, he's going to be thinking about video games or
bingo,
playing with Barbie or whatever.
Bingo, yeah. A teenager would be doing teenage things. You have to go through the ego thing first.
Right.
And don't forget, I didn't find this out till I was 44.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's quite old, really. I had no clue about it before, but
Muhammad had spiritual experiences in his 40s, didn't he? They started to occur within about 40, so...
Oh, right, I didn't know that. I see.
So, no, I think it's, again, I don't think age is too...
Right. See, I think of it in terms of the great work, and that at the end of the great work, you have the ability to bring all these things back up.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it for sure before. You know, I had a suspicion about it because of the dream when I was 24, but I couldn't confirm it, so I just sort of held it at arm's length.
So in terms of, even if these individuals are not necessarily aware of their angelic nature in terms of that they've been awakened at some level, in terms of their response, that intuitively you could sense that they'd had some kind of experience.
I would recognise. I will know who they are. I often recognise them, but it's difficult to confirm that. To say, oh yeah, I know exactly who they are. You know, I wouldn't want to say that. I just say that I can tell the difference between a person who is reincarnated many times and an incarnated angel. There's an obvious difference to me that is more intuitional than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that's kind of interesting what you're saying. So there's almost two types of beings, you're saying. Yeah, the beings who keep on getting stuck in the time loop.
Yes.
And then there are beings who have managed to free themselves from the time loop.
That's right.
And their intention of coming back is free choice, it's free will.
It is, it's compassion that
Are we talking
makes us
about,
do this.
I mean, I describe this in terms of what I've studied as the soul pattern, and in terms of that there are beings who can control their soul pattern.
Right.
I think that's done through controlling dreams. So in terms of having the ability to dream lucidly, because the dream state is very similar to the spiritual state, which is the imaginal realm, potential realm, in which the imaginal realm is overlaid over the physical realm. So I think that there are beings which can control their incarnation, but I think it's very interesting that you're saying that just because a being chooses to incarnate, they then come into a physical body, which then leads to forgetfulness. And what they then need to do is remember their divine state,
basically,
which is the basis of the Gnostic tradition.
Yeah, and their dreams will be showing them that, because I did have dreams in my teens that I now understand and didn't realise at the time that they were trying to tell me I'd already done it.
Yes. Yeah, I've had dreams which I didn't. I say dreams, but again, how do we define a dream, and what is real and what is not real?
Right.
Again, these are relative terms.
Yeah.
Sometimes dreams can be more real than reality. Sometimes that's how they seem.
Yeah.
So we talked about the angels and the host. And how does that link into the great work which you talked about earlier on?
Every single any being that has been born as an entity, like you or any person on any planet, once they make it, once they find divinity and achieve this light status and make that light, that is now an angel. They are an angel, but you find yourself back in your body about 10 minutes after you see the cloud. You live out the rest of your life. When you die, you do not need to start with a body from scratch. You do not need to be born from a mother's womb again. In the Bible, in 2 Corinthians, it describes exactly what happens to you after you die, after becoming an angel. It says that God gives you an eternal body that you can use, and that eternal body is you, the gardener of the cosmos.
Okay. And this is why in Islam and in Christianity, that there's this idea that the body isn't just resurrected spiritually, but it's resurrected physically. And again, that these two terms are not incompatible. I know kind of within traditional Christian theology, that they make a very crude distinction between the body and the spirit, but when you go into the more Gnostic traditions, the spirit and body are one.
Yeah.
So
fascinating, because that links back to the duality experiment, the thought experiment. They are both the same thing in two slightly different states, or two oppositional states at the same time.
To do with, I think that is to do with the perception of observation.
Aye.
So the Pyrrhus, I'm kind of intrigued because she talks about the Pyrrhus, and it's almost, there is multiple traditions of divine revelation given to man and written down so that man can see this, in terms of you already seeing words and you've been told things which made complete sense to you as a physicist, but it took time for you to process that information.
Aye.
So you then saw a Pyrrhus, and do you see this as an impartation of divine scripture almost?
Yeah, it was like...
I mean, are you a prophet at one level? Is a prophet an angel? I mean, and what is the distinction? You see, in the Arabic, the word for Muhammad is a messenger, which in the Greek, a messenger is an angel.
Right.
Now, remember that the Christians said that Christ was... he was the monogenes, the only begotten.
Right.
Okay, that has a connotation of being born of the Virgin, which is being born of the Spirit.
It's the lie.
But,
sorry.
Yeah.
Cool.
But anyway, the messenger, the idea of the messenger and the prophet, in traditions, it can be, shall we say, obscure what that really means.
Exactly, that's an issue I've had with it.
Okay.
How would someone define a prophet? The word prophet is to prophesy, which means talking about the future events. Surely.
Prognosticate, yeah.
Yeah, but I've never felt the need to do that. I've never had the inclination to go into anything like that, because I just allow things to be the way they are. Time takes its toll, people do what they want. You can talk about absolutes and generalities and say, well, next year, in 6 months' time, the Earth will be halfway around the sun. It's like, wow, how do you know that? Because the Earth goes around the sun.
Right, okay.
That's how I know that. So you can suggest that you're a prophet, but to me, I've never defined what a prophet is.
No.
And I don't think of myself like that. And I think of Walter Russell, who divulged a lot of the mechanics of universal process to do with galaxies and etc., really, really well. And he hasn't seen the light, as far as I know. He seemed to be enlightened. I've not been able to finish this concept of whether everybody has seen the light that considers themselves to be enlightened, because I never hear them talking about it or mentioning it or showing it.
Is this just a question of forgetfulness? I mean, certainly in the Greek there is this relationship between truth and memory. There's a correspondence between death and forgetfulness, so if we remember, then we know the truth, and to know the truth is to be eternal.
There you go.
So
there you go. That sounds right to me. So I haven't been able to define what a prophet is.
Okay.
So I don't think of myself in those terms.
No.
That's all. I don't think of it like that.
The interpretation, what a person is saying, and how that can be interpreted in light of what they're saying.
Sorry, the papyrus.
Yeah, I'm interested in what was said on the papyrus. I know that
I'll show it to you.
Down.
So all that happened was 10 months after I saw the light. 3 months after that, I see the angelic host in that expression, that hologram. 7 months down the road, I have the last of the major experiences that I've had so far. And this tells me that this light in my psyche is now my genie.
Right.
Because I was asking the question, what is the Great Pyramid? How do I understand it? What is it? Tell me. You're the light. You're supposed to be the creator of the galaxy, right? So tell me what the Great Pyramid is. This better be good. So I'm challenging the fact that I'm supposed to be illuminated. So I'm thinking, right, the Great Pyramid is called Mount Meru, and it's in the centre of all the world's land masses, and I'm seeing, there's the world, and I'm seeing that classic picture, and all of a sudden that's gone, and all of a sudden I'm seeing a sphere, a big sphere that's bland and grey, and it's rolling up towards me as if I'm in orbit around the Earth, and this is the Earth, but there's no features, it's just bland and grey. And as it's rolling up, a single pyramid is on its surface, and that is bland and grey as well. As the pyramid comes up, for some reason I instantly know that is the Great Pyramid, and that is the pineal gland of the Earth. So it's telling me that the Great Pyramid is the pineal gland of the Earth. Okay, and I thought, oh, what a good idea.
It's a good idea. I've never come across that idea, but that would make sense.
Right, so that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, that's not bad. That's a good answer.
If the Earth is the brain,
I've just challenged you, light in my head, and this is what you're coming out with. That's not bad. So as I'm thinking this, the papyrus just slides in front of that, like this, as if you have shown it to me, and you just passed it in front of my face like that. So if you show that to the camera, it shows you exactly what it looked like. Right, this is exactly what it looked like. And this image to represent what was there. There was Osiris in the throne, there was Isis in front of him, off behind them. Those three.
Describe.
Yeah, they were there. So my eyes are drawn to the central sentence which says, with these bricks I make my pyramid. And then I immediately jump up to this horizontal sentence that says, pyramids are diamonds in a field of clay. And I thought, well, that's quite interesting.
Well, in that respect, that would be a star, isn't it?
Exactly. Starfield as pyramids, yeah. And over here we have a vertical sentence that says, the universe is a field of clay scattered with diamonds.
Which are the stars.
Right, which are the stars. So
which are the pineal light.
You can interpret it like that. You can interpret it at many different layers, which I found out as I was looking at this. Instead of reading these sentences from left to right in a normal linear sense, I read the entire sentence at once. So all of the sentence was apparent at once. Therefore, I went from this sentence to this sentence to this sentence within 1 second of time. So this is in my mind's eye only, and I can clearly see it exactly as you see it here. All this space here was filled to the brim with 45-degree angle handwriting.
Almost like notes or...
Just explaining exactly what this is talking about.
So clay is the information. Are we talking about the information field, or are we talking more about the physical information?
You can apply this to any process. This is basically process theory. Yeah, it's a process theory, basically. So clay is a metaphor for information that you can take to be information you gather from your surroundings. But if you apply it to the cosmos, the information is energy. So you can apply it to physical cosmos and the mental process as well.
You see, there seems to be here also a correspondence. If the diamonds links into the pineal light, but we're also saying that this is stars. Is there correspondence with sunlight? Hence the relationship between those who are born of the light, which would be those who are enlightened, but obviously having a connotation of being an angelic-like being, or a person who is a starseed who has been born into a body.
This starseed issue is only particular to the Earth at this time in its history.
Okay.
It's only particular to that. Sometimes you get someone who is of the high nature who will come through the Earth and maybe help people and teach people. We've seen that in the past.
Is this because as human beings we're at a very critical time that if we get it right things could be great, and if we get it wrong it's gonna be horrible, we're gonna destroy the planet.
Yeah.
And it could go either way.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And we out of compassion, we don't want to see people do that to themselves because they don't know, and the knowledge of it has been removed from their psyche on purpose by those who hoard. Hoarders exist on this planet.
Yeah.
They hoard the riches and the physical stuff for themselves.
In my new book, Holographic Culture, I call them the disciperati, the deceivers.
Yeah.
So, and again, the word disciple and to deceive in Latin are from the same root. So, disciples which deceive. Again, that links into initiation, different levels of knowledge, and that they're taught through the lie, the truth. Yeah. But irrespective of all of this, the hoarders of knowledge, who are they exactly? Are we talking about human beings, or are we talking about the fallen angels?
Fundamentally, we're talking about human beings. So if you want to call them fallen angels,
I'm not trying to put a label on this. What do you mean about that?
To me, a fallen angel is, in its simplest terms, is simply a reference to the fact that it is an individual spirit or soul who has fallen into the material world only to rise again. Because that process of falling and rising is the process of the tree of life.
Right, the planting of the universe.
It's this. A tree of life is a cycle. Yeah, that is the cycle of the tree of life.
How do you see the Sephiroth then, which is...
the 10. The 10 points.
The 10 points.
The 10 points on the tree of life, the Sephiroth. Yeah, how do I see them?
Yeah, this is a very complicated field within symbolism.
It's right here. So this is how I see it. That's the tree of life there, broken down into its 4 levels. And if you apply it to physics, you've got 0 dimension, 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension. Okay, so there's a construction. If you apply it to a plant, you've got a seed that grows a stem, that grows leaves, surface, that grows a bud, which is a volume. And of course, the volume then, instead of the progression being external, progression now turns and becomes internal and refines itself. So construction and refinement is the complete cycle of the tree of life. And that's what everything is doing. That's what the cosmos is doing. That's what we're doing mentally. That's what the creator is trying to do. You have the creator with the light. He can't reproduce himself, but he can produce you that can produce him.
Would this be the aeonic field? Because I mean, I'm just... You see, obviously, there's Sophia, which is knowledge, which is an anagram of office, which is a serpent, and the serpent has many connotations. We won't go there, but we've got Sophia, which is knowledge, which is related to Sephira, which is a sphere, which would be the Sephiroth, which is that which is round or eternal. It's interesting how your numbers there add up to 10, which would be completion, presumably.
Yes, it is. Whenever you hear 10 in reference, you're hearing about the tree of life that is completed.
What's the significance of the number 9? Again, it's a very significant number which keeps on recurring within symbolism.
Well, there's so many things I could say about that. Is there anything in particular you wanted to focus on?
No, I was just curious just that the 9 keeps on repeating within symbolism.
9 is associated with the concept of completion.
Right, okay, it's the step before completion.
Yeah, it's like the single point at the top of the tree of life has 9 points below it.
Right, 9 roots.
9, there's 9, They are all the 1 point, but it's just an expansion of it. The 1 point contains a cycle.
Yeah, so it contains the 1 and the 0, which is 10.
Well, there you go. The underworld is 1 and 0. The light is 1, and the infinite space is nothing, so it's 0. I forgot to say, with this papyrus, when I read those 3 sentences, when I moved over and looked at the word clay, I didn't have to read anything else, because all the information from the papyrus seemingly leapt up off the papyrus, and I could feel it jumping up into my conscious mind in the front of my brain. And it was like a machine gun, a set of machine gun firing, lots of different graphics into my head all at the same time. And it took a split second for me to understand. So it was telling me again, just like with the hologram of the host, I got everything at once. I got everything at once with that as well.
Okay, which was?
So I could apply it to the cosmos and notice that the galaxy is using information to make bricks, to make pyramids, which are like stars and planets that produce, that are capped for divine union to become these diamonds. And if you apply that to the cosmos, you've got a sequential level. The galaxy, star, planet, creature, brain. Because the light is produced in the brain, which is the 5th level down. It's as if the galaxy is making a brain as a microcosm of the galaxy on purpose.
The brain is making a brain.
The brain, they're making each other in a way so that the light which is there at the origin can be remade. Recreated.
In the Gnostic tradition, this facsimile or this simulacrum was seen to be almost corrupted. Do you see it that way, or is this a perfect universe, or is this just a perfect this is as perfect as what it can be? Yeah,
nothing physical is perfect. Nothing physical will ever be perfect.
Is it nearly perfect?
It's the attempt at reaching for perfection.
But the perfection goes back to the original source.
The perfection already exists.
Yeah.
The physical is reaching for it. It'll never ever get there. It's like crossing a room, but only taking half the distance each step. You'll never get there. It reminds me of that. We did that in Mass a lot. Sequences and series.
So what's the point of becoming an angelic being?
Okay, there's a lot to say about that. You're truly free. You understand for yourself.
The truth will set you free.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody needs to tell you anything anymore, because you've got a direct line to all knowledge there is.
Know thyself, which is to know your soul.
Yes,
which
that's
is
right.
Ultimate understanding.
That's right. That's right. Therefore, there are lots of things you won't talk about. Do you know what I mean? I won't mention, because as soon as I mention one thing, it opens up a massive subject automatically.
And it's kind of interesting how we actually started corresponding. Now, I'm kind of curious about that. Now, you told me that you'd cast out your net and you'd written to a lot of people in terms of trying to establish contact after this experience and different authors.
Yeah.
I was one of the authors who sort of replied and we corresponded.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you're the only person I got a response from, really.
Right.
And I could see you get it. You got it. You got the point I was trying to make. It made sense.
I get the intellectual point. I think I struggle more with the experiential point. I think it's interesting because I've got an identical twin brother, which is interesting because Anthony's also got an identical twin brother. Yeah, it's rumoured that we're holograms, but anyway. My brother is kind of writing books, he's doing translations of Rilke and the Tao Te Ching and the Xing Xing Ming, and so he's interested in the mystical side, what you're talking about, which is the Gnostic side, which the symbols feed into. But then the symbols, because we're talking about two aspects of the same thing, we're talking about physical reality, so I talk about angelians and I talk about angelic vessels. I'm talking more about the scaphological tradition, which can be understood to be the ufological tradition. But I'm also very aware that tradition also feeds into the nature of consciousness, because they understand that and have deconstructed that. So I don't see as what we're talking about as being one interpretation is right or the other interpretation is right. I see them as being complementary, that they're very fundamentally interconnected.
That's right.
And this is why I was very interested in interviewing you, because although I'm fascinated with the nuts and bolts aspect, I'm also fascinated with the nature of consciousness. And your work assimilates the idea of consciousness with the physical, and it tries to draw together the two. And so the level of sophistication in terms of how you interpret symbols, as a fellow symbologist myself, I can appreciate that level of deconstruction which you bring to the subject. And so I was obviously very interested in meeting you from just a professional perspective.
Your entire book, this book here, I've been through almost with a fine-tooth comb, and every single thing in this book I understand why it's like that, why those words are connoted together, linked together. It all makes perfect sense. So as far as I'm concerned, you've done a perfect job, in the sense that you've been very, very honest about this research that you've been doing. You know what I mean?
Well, the book itself took 7 years to write, and the second book, and the second book, which I did, has taken 8 years. But again, it's more processing and filtering the ideas. And when I wrote that book, I was working sort of full time, whereas with the second book, I've just been focusing on writing. And I do want to produce more work, but again, the level of symbolism can drive you mad, because I think the public expect that a symbol just signifies one idea, and it doesn't. The symbol branches out. It's immensely complex. It is like an encyclopedia of information, and teasing that out and understanding that is fundamental to understanding how symbolism works.
One very small thing. One fundamental issue there is that light that we've just seen, or recently,
is the source of
is the Son of God and the devil at the same time,
which is Lucifer, the light.
Lucifer, and you can also associate the word Satan or the concept of Satan with it, because if it's the creator, it creates a physical harsh system. Then it's a physical interpretation of it as opposed to the spiritual interpretation of it, and yet it's the same thing.
Are we going now into the Gnostic tradition of the demiurge and the builder?
Basically, that's right.
And how do you see the demiurge? Do you see the demiurge as being extraterrestrial, or are we talking about metaphysical, or is it both?
The demiurge is the creator.
The creator.
As I read Gnostic texts, I understood exactly what they were telling me. They're telling me this same issue, and their interpretations. It would take several hours for us to go through. It would.
I know the Gnostics are very convoluted in terms of the symbolism. I've tried to pick it to pieces, and I'm only just looking at one aspect of this, which is less focused on the metaphysical, but it does touch upon the metaphysical, because the holographic nature of the universe is inherently metaphysical. So again, within my new book, Holographic Culture, most people have one conclusion, but I've got three conclusions, because it's the only way out to actually assimilate the information. So in terms of the Angelians, I look at them as physical beings, then I look at them as spiritual beings, and then I look at them as holographic beings, which is the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. So, So again, if we're not careful, people will argue over, are they physical or non-physical? The argument doesn't actually need to arise.
That's right.
When you begin to understand the next level to reality.
Their presence is enough to know. It's like somebody who says, well, if you don't know if the universe is expanding or not, you don't know everything about the universe. It's a bit like saying, well, is the Earth flat or not? Well, I couldn't care less what shape the Earth is because I simply live my life on it, no matter what shape it is, and it means it makes no difference. Yes, it is a technical issue to find out what shape it is, but it makes no difference to your ultimate understanding of yourself.
No.
Likewise, concepts of the cosmos, you don't have to know that necessarily, you know. Yeah. So getting, to me, what I've done, in a very simple analogy, is that the cosmos is imagine a bucket full of muddy water, and I need to see what is at the bottom of the bucket, but I need to move the water out of the way to do that. But the water is not allowed to leave the bucket. So how do I see the bottom of the bucket? I get a stick. It's muddy water, you can't see through it. I get a stick and I stir the water fast enough to create a vortex and a funnel that reaches down. The tip of the funnel will reach down to the bottom of the bucket and open out and show me the bottom of the bucket.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean? That's what illumination is, in very simple terms.
I mean, so you're dispelling the darkness.
Yeah, that's right.
And revealing the light.
That's it, basically, yeah.
And there's a diamond at the bottom of the bucket.
Bingo. There's a diamond in the field of mud.
You see, I think in the Judaic language, Adam means man, but Adam also means soil. Clay is used to represent man. But I kind of find it also interesting is that in the Arabic, the etymology of clay can be closely related to the dragon. And so there is that connection between the serpent and man. And again, this would be the non-human angels and the human angels, and we've got some images here.
I only have to show you this one thing to give you a grand idea that you can apply yourself.
It's interesting because the images which you're showing here, right, I've copied them both. I've copied that as an oil painting and I've copied that as a drawing.
Right.
So both of these images I'm aware of because I've actually, the Lady of Shalott I actually painted. I did a copy of a painting. It's actually in the book.
In your book?
Yeah.
That's right. So let me show the camera quickly what this is. Lady of Shalott and Divine Mother and Child over here. Okay, so we have the little boat in the sky. This boat is a black boat, just like this black boat that the Lady of Shalott is riding in. You see that? Yeah, it's the same boat. Both boats are the Divine Child, the representation of the Divine Child. However, when you make the Divine Child in your head, you become an Angelian, and therefore you are associated with gardening the cosmos using vehicles that we would describe as UFOs. Therefore, you can associate that with a UFO as well.
You can, yeah. And the Egyptians represented the bark or the boat as a lamp, which would go back into the genie.
Right.
So
yeah, I've mentioned this. It's the genie. It becomes your genie. It's like your footstool. It serves you now.
Is this what the Muslims talk about as the Karen, which is their constant companion?
Yeah, I suppose so.
This is the. I mean, their conception is if that person dies, and as my understanding of it is that the ghost is really a Karen. But irrespective of that, the Karen is a companion, the constant companion, and that would be the genie.
Uh-huh.
So here we're talking about the interior and exterior nature of reality in terms of... So consciousness is symbiotic by its very nature, but it's also externalized. So with the genie, are we talking about the splitting of consciousness?
No, because it's a separate entity. My consciousness, that light in your psyche is interacting with the physical psyche only because it's a physical product.
You said it becomes the genie, or it is the genie?
It becomes the genie. Yeah, it wasn't serving you before because you didn't have it on board. It's the creator in the center of the galaxy only, so it's a devil. So it's a nasty, harsh creator. But now that you have it...
So in other words, the neurotic thoughts in your mind creates bad situations?
I suppose. Whatever you focus on, you become.
Okay.
So if I think about high things and God and wonderful things, I will become... Godlike.
Right.
Yeah. Eventually, if you keep doing it, you eventually rise. Naturally. Okay. If I keep thinking of low things, drugs, sex, rock and roll, only indulgence, never thinking of anything high, I will stay in that level. Absolutely. Yeah.
So the Karen can inform inspiration, it can inspire, it can assist. You were talking about here a divine intuition which is linked back to the ultimate. An aspect of that.
Yeah, it never sleeps. I can tell you this light never sleeps.
Well, this is interesting because the Watchers are referred to as those who are awake. It means to be awake.
Yeah.
And they don't sleep.
It does not sleep, and you are aware that it never sleeps.
Right.
So you have to ignore it sometimes and
So
get some
even when you
rest.
sleep at one level, you're aware that it's there. It doesn't.
No, you still dream and sleep like normal.
Right.
Yeah.
It's when you're conscious.
Yeah, the dreams are quite different. They're very much more interesting than before.
More lucid and.
More lucid and more meaningful.
Okay.
More often than not.
So there's synchronicity within the dreams themselves.
Yeah, basically.
So that would again link into the transformation of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And your brain in the skull feels like a solid stone now.
Okay,
Yeah.
I am curious about the distinction between being an angel and the genie, and if there is a distinction.
Yes. You're the angel. You're the one who's seen the truth itself, the truth of flesh. You've gone beyond the cosmos. The genie is simply the light in your psyche. But it's the creator of the system as well, so it knows all about the system. It's the recording of everything in the system. It's like the minimal
Which
concept.
in Islamic tradition would be the Kiram and Kitaban, which would are the recording angels.
Oh.
I mean, they record everything.
Yeah.
But that in the Hermetic tradition are the two daemons of the rational and the irrational mind.
Right.
So again, the Hermetical tradition and the Greek tradition is very closely, in my opinion, closely interconnected with the Islamic tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Very little work, as far as I can see, has been done on that type of deconstruction, and I think that needs to be done,
Right.
preferably by Islamic scholars.
Right.
So that's the perspective anyway.
Right.
So that kind of does, at some level, fit in with the Hermetic traditions about angels, and it's not that dissimilar from what you're saying from an Islamic perspective. Possibly that
Right.
there does seem to be those relationships between those traditions, those religious traditions.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We're very close now in terms of the time that we have. Is there any single point which you really want to make before we round up?
Yeah, I could just say that this issue of seeing the light in this what I would associate with the underworld for sure. I call it the underworld. In my mind now, in hindsight, that concept is the most commemorated concept. It's the most importantly commemorated concept.
Yeah.
It's right here.
Okay, so this is presumably a being of light.
That's the light you see. It's associated with the head of a lion because the cloud has a similar shape to the head of a lion, whose beams can be thought of as a cat's whiskers. You see what I mean?
I see what you're
As well as a mane. So they're often represented as a lion because of the king of beasts, Leo. You know, the authoritative nature of a lion, as it were. There's lots of things going on there as well. And this is you. This is you in the near distance, looking at the cloud of light.
Which is a lion.
Which is you can interpret it as a lion with a cat's whiskers.
I mean there are also astrological connotations as well with the lion.
Sirius and Orion is also exactly the same.
We had the same conversation with Neil Hague when we interviewed him a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
Same conclusion, and it's very interesting because Neil is another person who, like yourself, has gone intently into the deconstruction of symbolism. And it's interesting that we're all coming up to this with the same conclusions, which is fantastic.
Yeah. So finally, I want to show you just one more picture.
Yeah.
And it is something very surprising indeed. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw this.
Just what do you see as Sirius? What's the significance of Sirius?
So the relationship between Sirius and Orion is the relationship between you and this cloud in the moment of that illumination. You are always appearing you are at the end of one of the beams.
You see, Neil told me that he thought that Orion was connected to the projector of the universe, but I'm seeing that.
I understand.
I kind of see that like Sirius could almost itself be like the pineal gland at one level, which would be.
Yeah. Because it's the brightest star in the sky, you can say, well, it's like the light. Venus is the brightest planet in the sky often. So you can say, well, it's the light as well. The sun is the most important orb in our sky, so it's the light as well.
And then you've got the moon,
and the moon.
But the moon is a reflection, so that's not
right.
That's
right. So each one of them has its own association to the same issue.
Which is light.
Yeah, and Sirius. So the face on Mars. Where is it? Here it is. Is that where the face is?
Okay. Yeah, that is the face on Mars.
That's the face on Mars.
Yeah.
And over here we have the head of a lion, and the lion. Where are his eyes from here? That's his mouth. That's his nose. So what people have called a five-sided pyramid is really the nose of a lion as a landscape artistic work.
Yeah, D&M pyramid.
Yeah, D&M pyramid, that's usually called, but it's a lion's nose. Here are the two eyes of the lion, and if you look at them, they are in fact looking at the face. So this is the same scenario I've just shown you with the man standing and the effulgence and the lion and the guy standing on top.
It's the same symbol.
This is what I see here on Mars. So it's on Mars. What was it doing there?
And again, in the occult tradition, you've got Adam, which is man, and Machadim, which is Mars. So there's a correspondence there. The Adamic man and the Martian.
Not surprising.
Yeah. Which is the red earth. Adam is red clay. Dam, which is blood. Which is the planting again, isn't it? The planting of life. So I think it's fascinating how, from my perspective, that what I describe as a scaphological tradition, which is the study of angelic vessels, and the idea of panspermia, which is the planting of life, can also, in terms of the nature of consciousness, be understood at a very similar level in terms of the garden, which is the field of awareness, and the stars, which are linked into diamonds, which are linked into light, which is the ultimate awareness, I think, of the observer observing itself. And now that feeds both into the physical manifestation of creation, but loops back onto itself, which is the original cause. And that loop between the physical and the spiritual. Now the ulterior nature of reality ultimately feeds into the externalization or the external reality. So
everything has to do with everything. There is nothing truly alien to you as an extant being. There is nothing alien to you whatsoever. The underworld is not alien to you. The cosmos is not. Pleroma is not either.
Which again is the idea of the anthropos, which is the anthropomorphization of.
And all it comes down to is your individual awareness of what there is. That's the simplicity of what we basically can do here, because we have free will to choose not to be aware of things if we don't want to. We have that freedom just to ignore stuff or not to progress. But normally, naturally, if you develop, you're going to progress.
And again, I think that's like all children are just fascinated with everything, and I think that regression is sometimes facilitated or engendered in ways within society.
Expectations.
Do you think the temple system was designed to wake people up, and that this knowledge somehow went underground, or how you described it as the hoarders of knowledge kept this knowledge away from the general public? I describe them as the decipherati, but I think we're talking about the same thing here.
Yeah, that's right. I see them as a dark brotherhood who are far too intellectual for their own good. They do not have the insight, therefore they think that it's okay to do what they're doing and it doesn't matter how they treat other people. It's a problem.
Well, again, it's this Sodi. You've got Sodi, which were the priesthood, and Sauda, which is black, and Sod, which is a secret. So again, different representations, but
but I see them as the sort of the bully in the playground, and their knowledge is so horribly deep, without going to the end, because you can't get to the end intellectually, but they have that horrible depth to them.
So if a person from the decipherati, for example, suddenly saw the light, it would change them so fundamentally that they'd just change, they'd walk away from it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So here we're dealing with an absolute understanding of let's say the mechanics of enlightenment, the mechanics of reality, but without going to that next level.
That's right. And the fact that this dark brotherhood exists has actually brought about the messianic age, or the host. The reason the hosts are here is because the average human cannot overcome that.
That's because of our ignorance.
It's partly because of that. It's also to do with the fact that their knowledge is so profoundly deep, even though they haven't got to the true insight, they haven't encountered divinity, their profound depth of understanding and knowledge within their own realm is such that nobody can fathom that.
Has that been facilitated by outside influences? By that I mean
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
And this is what I write about. I write about the parallel society, and which is this otherness which is hidden away.
A mutual agreement between those who are far superior to the Dark Brotherhood here. Imagine a mutual agreement between those two groups. That those are extraterrestrials who are very intelligent but far too scientific for their own good as well.
Yes, well, there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom, isn't there?
Bingo. Yeah.
Last point before we close up, is there one point which you want the audience to take away from this interview?
Yeah, basically anyone can become an angel because you're here to become an angel. That's the most important thing I can tell you, to realise that is a truth for you personally, and that nobody can stop you from doing that, because no one's going to know you're pursuing that outcome, and you will get to the outcome if that's what you want.
Right, thank you very much. It was wonderful to interview you.
Great pleasure.
I'll just quickly plug your book before we go off camera.
Yeah.
Again, I do recommend Phil Langdon's book on Gods of Divine Union, Illumination. And I think the level of symbolism in this book is, for anyone who's interested in occult symbolism, it's really, and particularly combining occult symbolism with Gnostic symbolism, it's really worth a read. So thank you very much.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pierre. Great.
Right.